welcome. We as a consulting firm are Gaia Tech Consulting, and today we're speaking to you as Tyson New Ventures, the venture capitalist branch of Tyson Foods Incorporated. Today we're going to be speaking to you about cultured meat, the clean way to eat, and we will be talking about the current and future agriculture industry. To begin, what is the future of meat? What we will be talking about today will not be plant-based meat. It will not be cloned animals such as Dolly the sheep. It will not be factory farming. It will not be unhealthy. It will not be a burden on our water supply, and it will not be environmentally harmful. To begin, I'm going to tell you how cultured meat is made and what it is. So, to begin, in order to make cultured meat, you need to take a biopsy from an animal. That involves taking a 2 centimeter needle into an animal using local or full anesthetic in the same way you would take from a human. From there, you'll be separating the muscle cells from the fat cells, and it'll begin replicating. It can replicate trillions of times its size. And then from there, you'll be providing correct conditions within a lab and providing an animal-free growth serum to enable it to replicate. From there, you'll take the cells from the biopsy and put them on a scaffold to form muscle and to enable it to have shape. And then electrocute it in order to boost proteins and to gain muscle in the same way that a weightlifter needs to consistently be lifting weights to grow. From there, the meat is ready to go, and you just grind up the muscle strips, and you can add flavor, iron, and vitamins to make it more susceptible for people to be eating. And then you can just decorate the food and serve it. So as you can see, this does not require any animal to be killed within the process. It has no embryonic beginning, so no animal is created to begin with. It's just taking part of an animal and replicating it. My name is Giovanna Hughes, and I will be speaking about the ethical part of cultured meat. The ethical part of the current market. To begin, we will be going over the current water use for the agriculture industry. Particularly for those of you from California, we know that we've been in a drought for about 5 years now, and many of us know about the vast impact of climate change within our daily lives. The current water use within within California is 4% for non-industrial use. That includes personal and non-industrial businesses. And animal agriculture within the Central Valley and elsewhere is about 47% of our water usage in California. Another big part of the animal agriculture industry is water pollution. Many people forget that livestock manure is responsible for 33% of the global nitrogen and phosphorus pollution, 50% of antibiotic pollution within our waterways, and 37% of pesticides in our global water supply. Much of the water within California goes out to the Pacific Ocean or to the waterways that residents drink throughout the state. Next, we're going over the environmental impact of greenhouse gases. As you can see from this graph, the greenhouse emissions from beef, sheep, pork, and poultry are incredibly high compared to cultured meat, which is just the little dark red spot down at the bottom. Land use is also incredibly high, and water use is even more high compared to beef production. In addition, when we speak of the current agricultural industry, it is actually contributing to the primary sources of greenhouse gas emissions within the globe and contributing to a vast majority of climate change. Many people believe that, many people attribute climate change to transportation and housing, but that's a large misconception that even many scientists and interest groups fail to bring to the public throughout the years. Animal agriculture is about 14.5% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, and that's more than the combined impact of every motor vehicle, including boats, cars, trucks, airplanes, and other vehicles throughout the globe. And that's according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. Methane, as opposed to carbon, is about 25 times greater global warming potential, and Methane is about 44% of the animal industry's total emissions versus carbon or any other greenhouse gases. About 50% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions are required by the year 2050 according to the UN, and will be regulated through the Paris Climate Change Agreement from 2015. In terms of animal welfare, this is another very public aspect of the ethical arguments against the current agricultural industry. The current agricultural industry uses primarily factory farms to create meat and dairy. In terms of animal welfare, it has been proven that animals can in fact feel pain, and this is reflected in our in the EU legislation, and is also reflected in American legislation, though is very lightly very lightly enforced. Factory farms came about primarily because there is a heavy push towards making farms cost-effective and cost-efficient. Because of this, animals are kept in tightly confined living spaces and are often susceptible to various diseases that are imparted towards them and their neighbors and towards humans who end up eating the meat. It is very normal to feel great discomfort, pain, abnormal growth, and disease and stress. Primarily, another aspect with animal welfare is efficient use of energy and resources. A lot of our land use is going towards growing the grains, which is very water heavy, in order to feed the animals for the 2 to 3 years that they're alive before they're killed for meat. So because of this, there's something called the energy hierarchy, which essentially means we're putting in a vast amount of energy, and the amount of energy we're getting in return is very small in comparison, and so it's not efficient by any means. Next, I will be going over human health and welfare. So the United States is about second in the world in terms of meat consumption, right behind Australia. Though we're very close, we're only 0.2% away. And this is shown primarily within our personal health. There are something called diseases of affluence versus diseases of poverty. One of the primary elements of diseases of affluence are the availability of cancers, strokes, type 2 diabetes, and other heart diseases. For the most part, meat is chosen for taste and status, not consumer health. Many people are preoccupied with getting enough protein in their diet, but in fact, the typical American eats far too much protein. But because of public perception, everyone is desperate to be eating more and more protein, especially meat that has a lot of negative side effects in terms of like fat and antibiotics within the animal. 60% of known human diseases also come from are animal transmitted, and there's also some antibiotic resistance that occurs when animals are pumped with antibiotics, and then we eat them, and the animal is getting resistant to various pathogens, and then we become resistant to various pathogens, and then you get what are called superbugs, which are essentially bugs that we can't fight and that have grown stronger because of antibiotic resistance. Also, the antibiotics put into animals come out through digestive processes that end up contaminating our waterways, like I was speaking about earlier. Now I'm going to be talking about the future market expectations of the environment, human welfare, and animal welfare by using cultured meat. So to begin, we'll be talking about the environmental benefits. There is no inefficient natural resource consumption when using cultured meat. We do not need to grow grains for animals to be eating. We are getting exactly what we're putting in. And based on these informed assumptions from the Oxford University, and by informed assumptions, I mean we have not obviously created a widespread use of cultured meat yet, so we're doing it based on research in the area on what we expect. It'll be about 99% lower land use, 82 to 96% lower water use, and 78 to 96% less greenhouse gases. In terms of energy use, this is the biggest problem that we have as of right now, and that is because it is currently undetermined what the energy production will be. Now it's a little bit too late, but if you had been looking at the graph earlier when it talked about how it's better for the environment, energy use is actually slightly higher with cultured meat than it is with traditional production because of how much energy it takes to run the bioreactors. However, if you think about any new industry and any new technology, for example, the first computer filled up an entire room and it could do almost nothing. Whereas now we have very sleek computers that can do very much, but it takes time to create technology that is efficient in use. So with your funding, we could continue research and development and then have lower energy use within the bioreactors. And in addition, waste pollution is emitted entirely when using cultured meat because there is no animal that will be having any digestive processes. So no antibiotics or anything like that will be going into our waterways or into our earth. Next, I will be speaking to you about human welfare. Like I was telling you about the diseases of affluence, many people who eat especially high amounts of red meat have a lot of problems with their heart health. Whereas with cultured meat, doctors will actually be able to give you prescriptions to go home and eat meat rather than having to take pills to regulate like your heart and things like that, because cultured meat actually does not have a lot of fat in it because the muscle and fat cells separate, and we don't want to be putting more bad fat into our burgers if it is a burger. And so instead we can put healthy fats in it during the later stages of production, such as omega-3s. We can also be putting more iron, we can be putting more vitamin D and various different nutrients that either you can get from a doctor or you can just pick ones out in the store in the same way you pick out vitamin D milk or you pick out 2% or 1% milk, but for me. The other great thing about this is that once it becomes widespread, we can send it to poorer communities, and those communities who are primarily the ones who are getting malnutrition or that have high rates of obesity because they only have access to Cheetos and to other bad foods that are cheaper in the stores, they can then instead be getting the nutrients from the meat. And lastly, the sterile production methods of cultured meat are required because it is in a lab, and they need to ensure that the meat doesn't catch any diseases that it would otherwise be prevented from having an immune system. And so this overcomes various food safety concerns that many people are afraid of within traditional meat production. And lastly, we'll be going over animal welfare. This one is the most clear aspect of the ethics. This is all meat without the harm. As I was telling you earlier, the biopsy is very safe and it can be done with local or full anesthesia. This meat is not coming from an actual animal, so nothing has to be killed. It is not embryonic in nature, so it has no beginning essentially, and it has no end of life. It just is. This is also a cost-effective method. The cells can multiply to the trillions rather than an animal you have to put in so much work over on average about 3 years and a lot of energy, and then it only provides enough meat for a small population. This is essentially physically immortal. The same biopsy can be used over and over and over again and can be recreated unendingly, essentially. And that's what the research shows as of now, but of course we have to see what happens in the future. One of the problems that the cultured meat industry had initially was the culture medium, which I mentioned earlier, the animal-free growth serum. Previously, it required something called a fetal bovine serum, which required taking the serum from the heart of a fetal animal, or an animal in fetal? I don't know. Oh gosh. And now we don't need that anymore. We can now use artificial serums that can come from cyanobacteria, wheat or corn, to get the nutrients needed to allow the culture to grow. And from here, I am all finished, and I will be passing it over to Joanna to talk about the legal aspects.
Perfect. So I'm Joanna, and today I'll be walking you through the current legality of how most of us obtain our meat, which tends to be factory farming, and then how, if we continue to move on the path of cultured meat, we can improve those issues. And then the future of legality if we're able to commercially mass produce cultured meat. So I should start off by saying, currently there are no U.S. federal laws that regulate factory farming, although there is some states that try to initiate their own regulations. One entity, though, that is concerned is the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, and they regulate genetically engineered organisms. Despite this legislation and this law, there's still some questionable treatment of animals. As you can see here, these are chickens in the span of 50 years. The 1957 chicken is normal, where you see the 2005 chicken with enlarged breast, and that's because of the rise of popularity of chicken breasts for consumption. In addition to dairy cows as well, they're also pumped with hormones that, such as estrogen, which increase milk production at an early age. This is good for the producer, however, I can't imagine it's good for the animals themselves. In the EU, there are a little more stricter guidelines for factory farming. However, they aren't enforced as strongly as their laws. Here we have a picture of kind of tight, closed living conditions for these cattle, which have lack of ventilation and makes it easier for the transmission of illnesses, which, as Giovanna mentioned, increases the use of antibiotics. In addition to the laws in place, also 8 out of 10 piglets go under amputations and castration and other procedures such as that without the use of any anesthetic. Again, not great for the animal. Because of these poorly ventilated and close living conditions, there are diseases that can affect the animals very harshly, and in turn, when consumed, they can hurt humans themselves. There's a couple of diseases I'm sure we're familiar with, E. coli coming from cattle, and to add on to that, when animals are consumed with these diseases, it's negative public perception for the companies that use this type of livestock. Adding on to the use of antibiotics to make sure the animal is sterile and is clean to avoid illnesses, the World Health Organization has advocated to either cease or reduce the use of these antibiotics because, again, like Giovanna mentioned, it creates these superbugs which are resistant to illnesses. So no longer will tuberculosis or other preventable diseases be preventable. Because of these really not very sanitary conditions, we have products on the market such as pink slime, which the production method to that is using discards of meat, and then they are disinfected with ammonia to make them safe. As you see here, the product is pink and slimy, giving it its name. And then again, there's been many companies that have come under fire because of these undercover investigators that have shown this to the public and kind of deceiving their consumers. Now, for the product safety of cultured meat, all these issues can be actually circumvented through the use of cultured meat because there is no live animal. Okay, there is no use of live animals, so, oh no.
Do we have a power source that we can plug it in?
You just keep going. Okay, perfect. Like I said, there is no live animal that's being used So
I don't look at the power, sorry. That's a video cable.
Okay, gotcha, sorry.
we can make it in under 9%. Again, there is no use of live animals, so these diseases that are transmitted through the close quarters will not be transmitted, therefore avoiding the use for antibiotics and making that better for global populations. And then again, this meat is in a controlled environment, meaning the lab is clean and sterile. And because we only use one cell to begin this entire process, it's much easier to not make mistakes when reproducing that cell. So if that cell is safe, then it ensures that the rest of the cultures will be safe. As for climate laws, again, there's no specific EPA laws relating to factory farming. So there's no specific laws relating to factory farming. However, on the website there is a couple of regulations and guidelines to help make sure the waste is disposed of properly. But in the Paris Climate Change Agreement, which was made in 2015, the EU and the United States, of course, is committed to creating some sort of they're committed to...
Do you mind if I pull it up on my laptop?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's just take a break.
I was going to go ask
I
Sheree
can-
for a power cord or something.
I can pull it up on my laptop. We'll be able to do it.
Okay.
Okay.
You just need to connect to the projector.
I don't think it will because you need a Mac adapter.
Give me a dongle.
Yeah, but if you don't mind.
Which I do have, but it's in my room.
Okay, well, if you have a chance to go get it, you can go get it, but I need to go over that. Yes.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
The connection
Yeah.
to the inverter was what?
Wait, let me just double check to make sure it's charging at the bottom. Oh, I'd have to go out of this. I just want to make sure. Does it have a charging? Thanks, it's a turn on. Okay, I'm just gonna. Okay, battery saver on. It only says 2%. Okay, just in case we'll keep that battery. Okay, I think that we're okay though.
Yeah.
You may want to plug it back in. It doesn't look like it's charging.
It doesn't work. Yeah, you can probably do this together.
Okay. So I guess the most
Hang on,
important...
hang on one second.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Do that one? Yes, it is. It was for a second, and then it went away. Oh. Yikes. Okay, wait. Okay, I can't tell. It keeps popping up like every 10 seconds, so I feel like maybe that means it is charging. It's like that one right there.
It's beeping, so I think it's charging. He has the adapter from the switch, but it might
Did you have the adapter?
I think it's
Okay, then we'll do it from my computer. Whew, we kind of anticipated problem.
Okay, yeah, we're just using this. It's
Okay,
charging.
wait, it's fine.
Isn't this cable right here an HDMI cable?
No, the one that
This is
we need.
this is the Ethernet, I believe. The other one, I don't have the other one with me.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll do our best. And if not, then we'll literally stand in front of you and hold up the laptop. We'll make it look great.
We'll make it work. Okay. I guess the most important law is because this is such a new biotechnology, the FDA guidelines are actually in our favor. So in 2006, they released a report saying how cultured meat is chemically, genetically identical to meat that you obtain from livestock, meaning that there would be no need to label. And then because this is such uncharted territory, there is no other legislation. The jurisdiction is very unclear, so the USDA handles meat, poultry, and eggs, while the FDA handles biotechnology. This means that because there are so few regulations in place, the first company to get on the scene and be able to produce this has the ability to set precedent in all laws. As you can see here, Tyson Foods owns about a quarter of all beef production in the US, so you can imagine how adding cultured meat could contribute to almost a domination of this market. And now I'll turn it over to Marin.
Thank you. All right, hi guys. So I'll be walking you through the business and financial aspect of this market. So how exactly do we market cultured meat? Well, first of all, we need to meet the needs of a changing industry. As it is right now, our world population and the demand for meat are both rising at an exponential rate that our current farming industry is not adapted to serve. Ethical and legal implications. The agriculture industry is not a sustainable practice and is not morally humane as well. In addition, legal regulations are not strictly enforced, which damages public perception of this industry, which has an overall negative impact on business, where we are losing our ethical consumers. So the key problem is public perception, and one of the biggest names in the industry is Tyson, and Tyson struggles with this due to the practices of farming as they are today. A reported 68% of consumers have reported concerns about food safety and the way we are manufacturing it. So the solution was innovation. In December of 2016, Tyson Foods launched Tyson New Ventures. And their purpose as a company is to continue to raise expectations for the good big food can do. Big food is often seen as potentially bad, and in order for us to feed 9 billion people, we have to get in the game and say, how do we come up with solutions and innovations? So Tyson is aware of this problem of public perception. They also own a 5% stake in Beyond Meat, which is a plant-based protein startup company. And their goal right now is to change their market for the changing consumer. And cultured meat is the perfect opportunity to do that and appeal to all types of consumers. Right now, Tyson feeds about 2 out of 5 plates in the United States. We want to expand that to 5 out of 5 plates. We want to reach out to the ethical consumer, the millennials, people thinking consciously about their meals, and expand Tyson's market for everyone. So right now there are about 7.5 million vegetarians in the United States. I'm just like 7.5 million vegetarians in the United States, which is roughly 3.4%. There's an additional 5.2% interested in following the diet, 14% that consider themselves flexitarians, and a solid 25% actively working towards eating less meat. But why are they eating less meat? The top 2 reasons at 53 and 54% are to improve their overall health, as well as concerns about animal welfare and the way we treat them. In addition, another 47% is for environmental impacts of these practices. So target marketing platform, how do we market this? Lab Meat has the most potential to reach millennials between the ages of 18 and 34, which recently just surpassed the baby boomers last year as the biggest generation with 75 million and is continuously rising. And we also want to target those consumers that try to avoid meat for ethical reasons. So we really want to branch out Tyson to every type of consumer. The conscious one, don't get me wrong, there will still be a meat industry. The demand for meat will never go away. There will still be farms, but we seek to expand this market. Current challenges this faces: funding for basic research, few researchers, public perception, as I mentioned before, and energy requirements. That's why we're asking for money to invest in cultured meat so that Tyson can pioneer the industry for future generations to come and set this precedent. We want Tyson to take control of it. So is this a financially viable option? In 2013, when the first cultured beef burger was produced, it was $370,000 per pound. Just 3 years later, in 2016, it was only $20,000 per pound. And right now, researchers say that under ideal conditions, they have the technology capable of making it only $34 a pound, which is about $11 per patty. In addition, Memphis Meats is a startup company based out of Silicon Valley that just produced the first cultured chicken and duck about a month ago, and their CEO has stated that they plan to mass produce this by 2021 at an equal, if not cheaper value than current traditional meat as it is now. So we want Tyson to pioneer this. They have expressed interest in working with big meat companies, and we feel this would be a very effective solution. And lastly, marketing strategies. The way to market this is getting on the public's good side. We don't want the public perceiving cultured meat as they do cloned meat or pink slime. We really want to give it a good reputation. So we want to use a creative design and advertising as psychological cues are what consumers respond to. An environmentally friendly label we suggest to appeal to ethical consumers around the country. And in addition, we want to target those millennials that are overtaking our current marketplace. We want all the good things about meat with none of the bad. And now we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, guys.
My initial reaction is, ew.
Yeah. No surprises.
What is this going to taste like? What if I want a T-bone steak?
Yes. So that was one of the primary, okay, I'll address two aspects of your question. That was one of the primary concerns. The first meat patty was created in about 2013 by Dr. Mark Post in the Netherlands, and it came to the market and it came to a focus group, and that was one of their primary concerns, is that it didn't taste very good. But with the omega-3s and being able to add flavor and being able to add various nutrients, particularly healthy fats, it will create a more moist burger, and it should be identifiable as regular meat in taste. And then for your second aspect, because you said something about a T-bone steak, the current technology we're working with is actually, they're focusing primarily on ground meat, whereas we didn't have enough time to address it in our presentation, but the process for more structured meat, such as steaks, stuff like that, is a little bit more complex. But because they're doing the chicken right now, they're expecting it to be able to move into that market as well, because chicken is considered more highly structured than ground beef.
Go for it.
Wow, well, a lot of information, thank you. I didn't know. $11 a patty, what does a traditional animal-based patty cost?
Well, if you take it, that's a double-edged question. So if you take into consideration all the climate and long-term effects, it's actually more expensive than $11 a patty. However, for example, the Big Mac is only about $4 a patty with all the toppings and everything. But as the technology gets developed, it will go down in price.
Are we talking cost or price here?
It depends on the company, because some companies will give you a $40 burger that doesn't cost that much to make.
But you said that your cost to produce is going down to $34 a pound or $11 a patty, so that's your cost.
That's what researchers say right now we have the technology for, but that's why we're pitching to you for the investment, is we need the money right now. So once we have the money and we can further our research, that'll open the technology so that we can lower that cost at a competitive price.
And then our research shows that millennials interested in more ethical consumership will pay a little bit of a higher price to obtain an ethical patty or hamburger.
A little bit, yeah, but if your cost is 11, I mean, the grocery store is going to sell it for 30, right? And compared to a regular beef patty, I don't know how much it is.
Yes. In addition, I would like to point out that in 2013, this price was close. It was $370,000. So just in 3 years, we've been able to dramatically, well, in 3 years, we reduced it by 1/18. And then from then, it was again dramatically reduced. So just imagine what we could do if we had more funding for this market.
And she was also saying that Memphis Meats expects to be able to make it the same, if not less, price within the market. Yeah.
For chicken.
For chicken.
For everything. They've also
It was
produced
just-
a cultured meatball.
It sounds funny, but yeah, the one that they came public with was the chicken, but they're still working with other meats as well. It's all about the same cost or I believe it's all the same cost. It doesn't really affect the meat because you aren't raising an animal that's going to be eating. You're only taking a biopsy that should be about the same size for each bit of meat. So if anything, I mean, comparatively, I didn't do the research for that, but.
So you said that you don't have, one of the benefits is we don't have to grow grains to feed the animals, but certainly the Petri dish is going to consume something. And at scale, what is the amount of stuff that it's consuming? It comes from somewhere.
That is the animal-free growth serum, so it could be coming from cyanobacteria, it could be coming from corn, or it could be coming from wheat. So in that sense, we would need to be growing those for the animal-free growth serum. I didn't see any numbers on that particular.
But presumably, we need less animal growth serum than we do grains to feed live animals.
Definitely.
So it's a net
Yeah.
win on the input side.
Much more sustainable.
Yeah, I was stuck on the cost issue also. That's a big deal. That's
It is a
like
big
10
deal.
times more expensive than the average pound of ground beef right now.
Exactly.
I wanted to know a little bit what your thoughts are on the societal impact of the decline in agriculture. Our country has a huge agriculture industry, and what you're proposing will be a significant detriment to that.
Yes.
So what do you propose for those folks who are displaced to do?
Pardon? What was that last
What
word?
do you propose for the folks who are
Displaced.
ranch hands and farm workers and farm owners? What should they do now?
I'll start and then you can follow up. For one, we believe that this is a market that is going to be slowly grown into. It isn't going to be an entire takeover of the entire meat industry. So that's something to keep in mind. Many people, particularly with public perception, will have a hard time in accepting something grown in a lab. You're probably going to get more coastal communities desiring to try out this first. Based upon millennial distribution and more progressive communities. In addition to that, many growing industries do get a lot of displacement, and you will get a lot of older people who are near retirement age that are going to be wondering what they're going to be doing. In terms of actual farms, they have proposed that there should be merging into more fruits and vegetables. Primarily, most of the fruits and vegetables within the United States come from California, and California does not have the water supply to sustain it. And so if we were to move more vegetable and fruit farms into more of the Midwest and the people who would otherwise be doing agriculture, that would be excellent.
Can you do the same with fruits that you're going to do with meats? You have cultured fruits and vegetables?
I think I've read like a couple articles about it, but it doesn't seem as.
Also, not to mention the fruits are highly structured, so with a patty it becomes easier to kind of manipulate the protein. So it could be a while for fruits, but
Yeah.
it's a possibility.
And in terms of, unfortunately, the ethics of it, displacement of people in their jobs, while it is very important, you also need to keep in mind that, for example, the coal industry, that's a big controversial thing right now that many people are wanting to get rid of it, but there are people holding on to their jobs there. So I think that there's going to be a widespread conversation across the United States to address what will be done to coal workers as well as animal workers, but thankfully this is a far slower moving industry than I think renewable energy is, and if we get the public awareness now, then we can prepare ourselves for that in the future.
So I want to build on my question. What you're asking us to do is to paint a giant target on ourselves, effectively. If we move and we invest money in this technology, we are going to be framed, I can anticipate, as turning our backs on all of the partners that we work with right now who we contract with to purchase and resell the products of their farms.
Well,
And you're talking, so you brought up a good point. I'm very leery of this decision as an investor because I don't know that my company has the resources to sustain and weather that storm.
Well, being a member of Tyson New Ventures and on their board, Tyson New Ventures was a branch of Tyson created specifically for the future of the meat industry. Tyson realizes that we have a problem right now with unsustainability and that it's not going to last forever. We can't keep operating at this level that we are. So that's why they created New Ventures, and which also has a 5% stake in Beyond Meat. So this is who would want to be investing in this type of product.
Yeah, and I think if anything, on the contrary, I don't think we're putting a target on Tyson's back. If anything, we are merely contributing to taking away that negative public perception of, injustices to livestock. We're trying to circumvent that and create a better, new, more futuristic image.
This innovation will fuel growth and profit, and the best business is one that offers the consumers choices. So that's what we want to do. We want to expand Tyson's brand for all those ethical consumers.
The current Tyson brand has actually gone down immensely since factory farming has come to the forefront of public visibility, and this is only going to help Tyson get to more consumers, whereas if they maintain their current brand, then someone else is going to take cultured meat, and no matter what, cultured meat is going to be coming to the forefront and people will want it. So this is your opportunity to be the first people within the industry rather than holding on to old practices, which if you look at any company, whether it be in like technology in Silicon Valley or if it's within the United States more in the central Midwest, everyone needs to be innovating. Innovating is the only way to stay afloat as a company.
And anything, we're opening up new markets, so vegetarians can now be able to consume this as there's no killing of any animals, which is in line with their ideology.
Also healthier, and Marin went over a lot of the positive aspects that this would completely take care of every worry that every vegetarian has for any reason, whether it be environmental, health, or animal welfare.
Why is that? I mean, it's still meat.
Because you take away, so current meat, like the animals, by standing in like these factory farms and these confined spaces, you're not moving, you're not exercising, you're getting a lot of fat built up, you're getting antibiotics put into your body that if you cut me open and eat me, you're going to be getting bad things. Whereas when the muscle and fat cells separate, all you're getting is a skeletal muscle, and then that's what we were saying, it's a bad taste, why would anyone want to eat it? But then you're putting in the healthy aspects, which would be the omega-3s, the vitamins, and the minerals.
But it came from something that had a face and a mother.
But
I'm the kind of vegetarian that doesn't like that.
No, not exactly, because again, it's not embryonic in nature, which means you're taking a piece of me, and I'm still here, but you're putting that piece of me in this petri dish or a larger scale thing, and you're going from here to here with a brand new meat of me. It isn't the same thing as killing me. I will still continue to live until I naturally die, and you won't need to make me give you my baby and then take my baby away 2 days later. The animal welfare aspect of it is almost entirely thumbs up.
Mike?
I think it's very convincing what you're recommending. I mean, I understand Pat. I understand Pat's position, and I think it's a good point. However, I don't want, as a board member of Tyson Food New Ventures,